Hello, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Monday, and I'm here with one of my favorite people in the world, Julie Palmer. We were just talking in the green room, reminiscing about how we met on this podcast. And then I've had the honor of working with you in some of my coaching containers, Fearless Feminine and Glow. And you're just such a goddess driven, powerful, inspiring, incredible woman. Like, I feel so honored to meet with you. We had so much fun that very first podcast episode. Go check that out. That was one of the very first ones I ever filmed. And so now we're here like 100 episodes later and we get to chat about all the beautiful things that you've been up to. So I'll turn it over to you for a brag intro. You know the drill there.
Well, thank you, my dearest Megan. And I am going to brag that I've been navigating a lot of heavy, heavy stuff. And
Yeah.
and the more that I know, I, as a woman who focuses on my own power and my gifts and how I can be in service to others, that life doesn't stop lifing while we work on
Hmm.
creating beautiful businesses and serving beautiful souls. Life keeps lifing, and in this case, grief has been a big part of that and other things.
Hmm.
And so navigating a lot of stuff while also hanging on to my true purpose, I think, is
Hmm.
is the biggest brag I can share right now.
Absolutely. And we actually were just talking about something pretty intense right before we went live. And I just had that experience of having to do like a little TV intro. And that day it was eclipse season. So there's that. But I got triggered like 5 times right before I had to go on air. And I was just realizing we kind of did the same thing to you. So I think that's a brag in itself when you can.
Mm.
And then how goddessy, right? To be able to be present in both the really like beautiful and wonderful and pleasurable,
Mhm.
and also, the painful and the deep, deep. So that is quite a brag.
Well,
Well,
thank
brag.
you. And we do have that beautiful reminder from all of the goddesses and the goddess archetype, right? That we are so powerful that, on the one hand, love as only a mother can love, which is the purest, most protective, divine motherly love. And at the other hand, we can be that fierce protector and get angry and have that sacred anger at the same time, and whatever is in between all of that, and the fear, right, for our loved ones. And that gives me comfort that there is, this beautiful image and archetype that we can look to for guidance in all of these times.
Yeah, and we live in a really dualistic world,
Yeah.
and I think we all want like positive vibes only, but that's also like impossible.
Hmm.
And for my therapy background, I've been a dialectical behavior therapist, and one thing that I think really helps people's mental health is to realize that there's a dialectic. And so, like, and I've had this happen many times where I was going through one of the best moments of my life, simultaneously going through one of the worst moments in my life. And so, I think when you can embrace that level of chaos and
Hmm.
duality, life gets a lot easier. And like you said, life doesn't start lifing, or life doesn't stop lifing. And mom, the
Hmm.
mom job is never over either. So even
Right.
when you're having a hard time, sometimes that's when you're called on the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be in a position of taking care of myself, but also taking care of, whether it's my children, ailing parents, and
Mhm.
and even though now I'm without parents, right? So I've achieved, haha, right? But I'm at that point in my life where now I am the highest generation living
Mhm.
for
You're
my
the
family.
matriarch. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And,
I know it's
legacy
under sad
has
circumstances,
become,
but
but
also powerful.
powerful. Absolutely, it's powerful. And I was even reminded when I was preparing the eulogy for my mother's service, she taught me how to do this. And I didn't realize it
Mm.
until that moment, because she was 33 when she lost both of her parents in the same year.
Wow.
And I can only now truly, truly start to comprehend what she herself had to go through.
Mhm.
And she lived 42 years more, where she was able to access joy and still be the kindest
Mhm.
person and be in service to other people, right? And so that's what I'm looking at now, is how do I use her example to be a legacy for our
Mm.
collective family, for all of my ancestors? And how do I bring my children up into that same recognition, right? Where they are the continuation of that as well. And it's not simply being, because just simply being a living legacy is one thing, but then what else is there, right? The inspiration of a life well lived,
Mhm.
and to remember that despite the grief and no longer having alive parents, I know that I can still access as much joy and delight and bliss as I want to, and I can teach my children to do the same, to to prepare them for the same thing one day.
Mhm.
Trusting that it'll be a long time from now, but still, that's part of the legacy, is teaching our children how to thrive without us one day. And I'm only now just starting to really consider that.
Yeah, and I think death is such a topic that we as a culture and as humans avoid. I really
Hmm.
like the quote that says something like, um, when the baby is born, the humans celebrate and the baby cries. And then, like, when a
Hmm.
soul passes on, the soul is happy, but the humans cry, And I think it's, again,
Yes.
like the duality of
Yes.
it. And I think so true. And I think, so often we don't get a good goodbye, and that's not always possible. But I think, like, that is the grief process, is like the
Hmm.
making meaning, and like, how do you say goodbye, even maybe not with that
Hmm.
person in front of you, but still like symbolically for yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that's really beautiful how you can honor her. And what does it mean to kind of be the matriarch? Like, are you wrapping your head around that? Like, you've certainly had some goddess practice.
Well, and that's what I have to keep, leaning into, is the all of that beautiful energy I've already danced with. I think of the high priestess energy.
Mhm.
That is a beautiful example of this. And I also think about storytelling, right? That now I want to share more stories, right?
Mhm.
To give context, right? And roots, even more roots, to my children, and eventually the grandbabies that, it's going to be a few more years, but they'll come,
Mhm.
and being, oh, I'm probably going to tear up at this. Being so dedicated to our family. Yeah, here it comes, and that's okay. I am so okay. We can do this. And I am a stand for my family as a, and what it takes to work on ourselves and work together to solve big things that can erupt in families, right? And that it's enough to hold tight to our family, right?
Mhm.
And I recognize that not all families have that, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm not standing in judgment. I don't want this to be something that makes other people sad, because that's not part of their family story. I'm only talking about what's true for my family, right?
Right.
And that part of my role now is to be the one that takes the biggest stand for my family and for
Mhm.
our collective thriving,
Mhm.
and because I have 6 children and people always go, what? Um, that means whenever they need extra support, it's being a stand for them and for helping them find
Mhm.
what they need, right? It's also for my college daughter who's going to Japan in the fall, and we're still looking for scholarships that I know we'll find that are going to support her. There are so many ways that this starts to unfold, and it feels I feel so anchored in who I am
Mm.
and who we are as a family when I get to do that. And that is supporting me a lot right now. And
Mm.
and for that means more, more thriving children, happier, more joyful, thriving children.
Yes, well, what a brag in itself that you're the mom of 6. To me, I can't even comprehend the emotional labor that would go into something like that. That's definitely been something that's on my mind a bit, has been that, like, maternal deprivation. Is there anything you wanna say to that? Like, especially going through a moment like this where, you know I know when I'm having a bad day, I'll still call my mom and be like, "Mom."
Hmm.
When you don't have that mom to call in the physical form anymore, you can
Right,
call on her
right.
spiritually, of course, energetically.
Mhm.
Um, how do you handle all the hard moments of being a mom, especially a mom of 6?
Well, I rely on my partner,
Mhm.
absolutely, and I'm also so blessed that I'm so deeply connected to so many amazing souls, and I can call in
Mhm.
others like that as
Mhm.
well, and finding, gosh, any one of who I call my sister goddesses, right?
The
That
Goddess Support League, right?
absolutely, that for me, that feels like it's enough, right?
Mhm.
And I'm good with that. I'm because I not only do I need to be okay with that, right? Because that's my reality now. Um, no, it just it is. It's not a matter of what I've lost. It's just a matter now of, okay, what do I still have?
Mm,
And
mhm.
and I even remember a comment I made to my husband after losing my mom. I recognize that some people feel this orphan
Mhm.
experience. And I've had other people kind of say that to me, but I can't say that I've felt that. I felt the grief. I have thanked my mom for already showing me how to live without my parents. And yet I feel grounded and anchored still. And I'm grateful because hearing that experience of others when they use that term, there's this other layer of it feels like unsupported, right? And almost drifting. And I don't know what that feels like because that's not my experience right now.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful because it reminds me that I am deeply connected to my spiritual practice and my my goddesses that who I serve but feel
Mhm.
supported by, and it is my community. It is my closest friends, and it's family, right? I've
Mhm.
got adult children, and so I can lean on them too, as well as they can lean on me, right? So that is a beautiful
The
gift in and of
reciprocal.
itself. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm. I love that because I think so many of us try to do it all on our own, or maybe we ask for help and then people are busy or they're not able to or whatever. And then it reinforces the belief we have to do it on our own. And
Yeah,
so I love how well your mom prepared you
yeah.
to step into this role of matriarch and, that we both met through the pleasure community. And so,
Hmm.
like, to be able to receive the support that you give out, I think that that is the ultimate gift as a goddess. And I think a lot of
Hmm.
healers are not very good at that. They can give to others, but they have more difficulty
Mm.
receiving. And so I
Hmm.
think it's beautiful to see you in that receptive mode. And that, like, that's the whole thing, right? We want to
Hmm.
be able to feel good along with
Yes,
making other people
yes.
feel good.
Absolutely. And to know what kind of ways I need to nourish myself, right? Because
Hmm.
what I need is different from every other woman. We all have
Hmm.
a very personalized way that we need to replenish and restore and
Hmm.
fill ourselves back up. And so the more that I step into the highest version of me, the most authentic version of me, that allows me to know with even more clarity what I need, and to unapologetically say this is what I need. It surprised some people. The day after my mom departed this earth, I went out into my community. It was somewhat of a festival that we have the first Friday of every month, and I
Hmm.
knew so many of my beloved community members were going to be out and about. And I knew the extrovert that I am, despite grieving the sudden loss, I was going to feel better by seeing the people I love, by engaging in beautiful hugs where it was, giving and receiving in those beautiful moments. And I did that. I did that. And I even told the world through Facebook, I'm like, hey, y'all, I'm coming out. And here's what I know I need. So when you see me, please feel free to wrap me up in a big hug because that's what I need right now. And that's what I got.
Hmm.
And that's what I got.
That's so beautiful. And I think, a lot of people, it's so vulnerable to ask, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's where a lot of us just expect people to read our minds. Often, if we're intuitive, we feel like everybody else is. I think everybody has the capacity, but it's certainly a
Mhm,
skill that you have to practice. And so
mhm,
I just find that people become so much more effective when you can ask. And sometimes you have to ask multiple times,
mhm,
right, to be
mhm.
able to actually get the response that you need. So
Yeah,
I think that's beautiful. I mean, you're so self-aware,
yeah.
obviously. And so, that's really
I
beautiful to
try.
see.
Thank you.
I found like when my dad was going through the cancer treatment, um, you know, I had a lot of grief and tears. And when he's been a three-time cancer survivor, and so we've gone through this three
Mhm,
times, and each time has been very emotional. And I found like in those times of grief, even breakups or different things like that, I almost feel like more alive because you
mm,
can see the really like beautiful moments and you have the
mhm,
really painful moments. And
mhm,
I know when we were going through that this most recent time, that Adele song where it's like washing your hands in the water, there's no gold there, that whole one.
mm.
Every time that song would come on, I would just be like, "Whoa," and just tears, that was like my grief song. It was very popular at the time and it came on a lot. But do you kind of find that as you're going through this like raw moment, do you feel more in touch with your humanity and aliveness?
Well, this is what living is all about, right? And
Mhm.
so the big emotions are part of it. It means we're living, it means we're
Mhm.
truly living.
Yes.
Because if we were numb to it all and barely just went
Mhm.
along life like this, what kind of life would we ultimately live? And
Mhm.
so I'm an emotional person. I'm a Pisces. I'm an extrovert. I know who I am, right? And
Uh-huh.
and so I especially know for me that I can't be any other way than to be in the emotions of it. And that I think that's the best way to honor ourselves is to say I'm going to live as fully as I can. And living fully, again, it would be total spiritual bypassing if it, like you said, good
Mhm.
thoughts only, right?
Mhm.
No, it isn't, because having the opposite of what we desire in terms of, the kinds of feelings, the kind of day we'd like to have, experiencing loss, experiencing really difficult times helps us, number one, find deeper gratitude
Mhm.
for the good stuff when we have it. But it
Mhm.
also, the growth that happens, right? The courage that we find in those situations, the trust in our own selves to navigate hard stuff. Thank you,
Mhm.
Glennon Doyle, who keeps reminding us that we can
Mhm.
do hard stuff. That is living. That is living. And so if we can
I think
show
she's a
up,
Pisces if I'm
right?
not mistaken.
Oh, hell yes.
Doesn't she seem like one? It totally makes sense that you're a Pisces to me.
Uh, Thank you. That's really affirming. I appreciate that. Right? That's what this life is for, right? How do we live fully in every situation where we show up in the messiness and the wretchedness at the times that it requires us to, but we also find deep within us courage and strength and unbelievable gifts that we made it and we may not have yet known that they were there, right? And so
Mhm.
that to me is the greatest gift, right? At the end of my life, eventually, I'm going to look back and say, damn, you lived it, Julie. You lived it, right? And that's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think so many people are scared to do that because they don't wanna be wrong or make mistakes or
Yeah,
be imperfect, and I think that's part of the goddess path is just embracing
absolutely.
the chaotic, that is sort of the
Mhm,
feminine energy, right? Is like
mhm,
the not form, right?
mhm.
Like the ethereal, the fluid, which is more, you know,
Absolutely. Yes.
intense, let's say.
Yeah, yeah. And gosh, how can we help humanity fear failure less? Right? I think
Yeah.
about that a lot. I
Just
think
like that
about
growth
it.
mindset, so
Yeah,
huge.
precisely, precisely. And I there more and more we're seeing beautiful reminders, stories from who we perceive out there to be mega successful people who remind us how much they failed, right, to get to where they are.
Mhm.
It is a necessary part of growth, right?
Mhm.
Just like we skin our knees and eventually we got that scab comes off, right? It's just an inevitable not the most fun thing, but yet it's life,
Part of the
right?
cycle. Yeah.
And without it, I mean, how I can't even conceive of a life that's lived without failure and the gifts that truly come from when we fail and we lean into it and we learn so that we are better for it and we pour that wisdom into the next thing.
Yeah. I often say to clients, like, the only way you can fail really is not to go for it in the first place, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
This is really alive for me, partly because we both kind of share the writing call from the
Hmm.
goddess, right? And
Hmm.
I've known that that's been a big part of my path and purpose. And about a year ago, started really getting this like kind of solid book idea, but have had kind of writer's block and
Hmm.
you know, a shiny object project syndrome where I'm doing all the things, right? So it for NaNoWriMo in November last year when we were in Fearless Feminine working on the book stuff, it really came through. But then I've had another big burst of it. And I think
Oh,
just like
good.
as I was allowing it to flow, the
Hmm.
first thing was just like, oh, this isn't it. You can't write about this. And then I was like, well, no, just like I'm under a deadline to get like a certain amount of pages. So I was like, just write and you'll figure it out later.
Yep. Yep.
And that's when it really, like, came through, and so it was just
Mm.
such a humbling experience again just to, recognize that, like, that inner critic stops all the good stuff, the pleasure, the
Mhm.
creativity, the satisfaction.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm reminded of Elizabeth Gilbert's amazing book,
Yes,
Big Magic,
love
because
that, her and that.
oh, yeah, that book was gifted to me at a time when I was through some transformational training, finally stepping into a bigger, more authentic version of me. And as a creative, it reminded me, number one, right? Failure is a part of it.
Yeah,
And and a true gift, but also that each of us is blessed with our most unique gifts and we are here to create regardless of sales, art shows, right, whatever it is, even right, publishing companies, that we still are responsible to the great divine who has given us these beautiful gifts and skills. And what if we deny it, somebody else may be gifted that opportunity.
mhm.
Yeah. And I love that because it was just a beautiful, like, permission granting kind of experience for me early on to just really fundamentally anchor me into that truth that it is simply necessary to express my creative gifts
Mhm.
and just to keep doing that and regardless of sales, right?
Right, and it's so easy to get focused on the outcome, especially if you're
Yeah.
trying to make a living, I mean, that's
Mhm.
very real, especially in these times, um, and yet, like, to really be a creator, like, you kinda gotta do it for the love of it. I
Mhm.
think you're maybe referencing this part in Big Magic where she talks about, like, having the story idea and then it ends up going to her
Mhm.
friend,
Yeah, isn't
and
that
then the friend
amazing?
writes the book, yeah,
Yep.
and when I heard her do I think she did a TED Talk around Big Magic or something like that, and, she was just talking about the muse kinda coming through
Mhm.
you, and that actually really helped me create that it's kinda like channeling or tapping into something bigger than you because I think it's maybe Brené Brown who says, like, the first thing is, like, um, "I'm not good enough to do this thing,"
Mhm.
and then if you get over that shame, then it's like, "Who am I? Who do
Mhm.
I think I am to be doing this thing?" And I work with a lot of artists and creators and, of course, goddesses, and, a lot of us can't fit into the corporate or the 9 to 5 kinda
Mhm.
lifestyle, like, we are meant to be doing things outside of that system and on our own
Mhm.
terms, and I think it's so exciting that technology has like, I didn't have to ask permission to do this podcast, I just created it, right? And
Right, right.
technology has given us you don't have to get an agent, you don't have to
Mhm.
have the patriarchy's approval,
Mhm.
like, all you gotta do is hit record.
That is you just hit something so powerful there, right? Because we are living in a time where everything is changing for us as women because
Oh, yeah.
we decided it was so, right? Because we
Mm,
decided
chills.
that Competition didn't support us, that supports the patriarchy, right? But
Mhm.
co-creation, collaboration, celebrating each other, that is how we choose to operate. And we're doing it for ourselves and nobody else at times. And isn't that just delectable, right?
Mhm.
And what a time to be alive to witness that absolute shift,
Mhm.
right? And knowing that it's going to be even better for our
Mhm.
daughters, right?
Yes.
That's what I love.
Yeah, agreed. Ugh, I know it's such
Mm.
a I know it's such an intense time to be alive. Talk about like
Mhm.
grief and dialectics.
Yeah.
There is so much potentially to grieve about, and yet there's also, I think, less publicized, but like there's so many
Mhm.
like grassroots behind closed doors, or even like this kind of thing, a more public venue of like,
Mhm.
people moving the paradigm forward.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's an exciting time. So I think if you're, for the listeners out there, if you're feeling like, the world has gone to hell in a handbasket kind of thing, I could totally, I want to validate that. I could
Mhm.
see that. And, like things have to collapse for things to get better in certain ways.
Yes, absolutely. And we are here not only to observe and to play in that beautiful playground that women are creating for ourselves, but that's also really radical and part of how we can support the collective
Mhm.
to not only survive the collapse, but to be part of creating the new of what's
Mhm.
going to come after as we
Mhm.
move into thriving again, right? Collectively with systems. And it's big work, but wow. I mean, I think about the beautiful humans who are 10 and 20 years younger than me, right? And how they're already showing up in the most wonderful ways that they're
Mhm.
prepared for this too, right? That we're all
Mhm.
working towards this same thing. Along, and that requires us to be of the mindset, right? That we're okay with the crumbling of systems and
Mhm.
and everyone else who isn't and who are fighting for this to keep something older in place. I'm sorry, it's just
It's not
there.
gonna work.
It's not going to work. And having being on my own path, it's gifted me with this understanding of these big cycles and p- without us necessarily having to engage. They are happening, right?
Mhm.
And it's a gift to be aware of it, number one, and to be able to back in the flowy goddess energy, right? Flow with the changes and to flow within the chaos while still being a stand for what we believe in and supporting the most vulnerable of us. That's all big goddess energy for sure.
Yeah, big goddess energy, I love that. Um, I'm just sitting here, like, struck with, like, how much you're embodying some of the fearless feminine vibes, and, I
Mhm.
think you're goddess by nature, so some of that is just you. But I'm just kinda wondering if you care to share a little bit about, what that experience was like, and you did glow as well, I think, which is sort of like
Mhm.
my, pleasure primer. So just wondering if there's anything you would want to share about that. And just, I think uh you're a fearless leader. Like you really are embodying, which I think sometimes is the hardest part, but embodying and leaning into and sharing and speaking about and helping women experience it through your retreats and different things. So I'm kind of curious if there's anything, a shameless plug here.
Mm. Well, this is
Anything you want to share?
your platform after all. So,
I got to sell a little bit.
please, I'll support
Yes, next
that.
round is gonna probably be next month, so you're invited, of course.
Ooh, ooh. Why that, of course, always makes my heart so happy is because I I had just such a beautiful, connected, affirming, exquisite experience. Every time I dance with you in your containers,
Mhm.
the vulnerability that we achieve so rapidly, what with whichever cohort happens, you
Mhm.
have this magical ability to very rapidly bring this group into this sacred place where we just, and it's not almost a decision, it's a feeling rather, that we can say whatever we need to say.
Mhm.
We can talk about the hardest stuff or our greatest desires,
Mhm.
right? And not only are we supported, but you can then go quickly into, well, what does that mean? Have you thought about this? Right. And so there's support, there's accountability, the joyful opportunity to witness other sisters just thriving and soaring with their own creative gifts, and the from the earliest cohort, right, to the most recent one, just the exquisite opportunity I witness other amazing women from the very beginnings of something to now. Wow, look at them and everything they're up to. That is my favorite part, I think. And oh, I remember you, not just that, but it's more like, oh yeah, I already know you.
Mhm.
And we can keep kind of diving back in, and now we're each at a different point. And now
Mhm.
what? Right now, what is it that each of us needs, and how can we then? What's the next step that we're working on, right?
Mhm.
Or a new idea, or a complete 180, whatever it is. This is where it can be, and from an early planted seed to something that is beautifully blooming. That's been my experience.
Mm. Thank you so much. I feel so honored. I had to intentionally make myself be quiet and receive the beauty of all of that because I wanted to jump and say things, and I was like, no, no, don't interrupt the transmission. But thank you for saying those things. I feel so seen and validated. And yeah, you've done multiple rounds and multiple
Mhm,
containers of programs. And yeah, I feel so honored. I mean, I've always had, even my therapy clients have worked with really amazing
mhm,
people and creatives and goddesses and stuff. But coaching is like a whole nother level because it's like we're not having to deal. Well, sometimes we do deal with mental health crises. Let's be real,
right,
but
right. Yeah.
that's not the main focus. Although obviously overcoming your fear and tapping into
Mhm,
feminine power is the focus.
mhm.
But yeah, it's that triple threat of like the therapy background, the healing, and the coaching. And I feel like
Hell
it's such
yeah.
a juicy combo of all three.
Mhm,
Because that's been my frustration with being a therapist for so long is that sometimes people, I totally get it. Um, but they might have a limiting belief or they don't think it's
mhm,
possible for them. And so they kind of just stay stuck in their thing and they're like maybe not able to take action or make strides. And so that's what's been beautiful about coaching is that especially when money's on the line, people really want it and they want that
mhm.
big passion, change the world business. And we need those businesses, right?
Yes,
It's
absolutely. That's part of this exquisite paradigm shift where women are stepping
Mhm.
into creating not only what they need,
Mhm.
but what the world needs.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so, and you're, I think, representative of the kind of woman that is in my containers, and I think you brought so much, with your loving energy
Mm,
and your, goddess wisdom, and so I think that that's also what I love about coaching and groups in particular is just that, like, everybody gives, and so I think
mhm,
it's more reciprocal than with like one-on-one coaching where maybe you're having a little more of that like pouring into the person
mhm,
because of that
mhm,
dynamic versus like everybody can give and receive in a group.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
mean, you can in one-on-one too, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
It's a little different dynamic. uh so thank you so much for that beautiful testimonial. And yeah, I think I know for me that was why I created Fearless Feminine was just because I knew I was supposed to write the book. I knew I was supposed to be like a public figure. I knew I was supposed to teach on these things, but I was so scared. Some of it was body image, some of it was like being on camera and tech and confidence, some of it was just busyness of life. And so I think when people express about like we all like kind of lock arms and rise
Mhm,
together,
mhm.
you need the support of your goddesses to be that out there.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
you are an exquisite example of what I love about how you embody your role as a coach, because by you choosing to be authentic and share, whether it's right a tech issue or this or that, or right,
The good, the
name
bad, the
anything.
ugly. Yeah.
It just is, right? And so you give us permission, right? Whoever's in your container with you, right? Because you are not showing up as, and there, these exist in the industry, unfortunately,
Mhm. Mhm.
coaches who put themselves on pedestals, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
you have a gift in how you show up for your clients, not only with all the tools and techniques and the ways you help them grow, heal, transform, you are also beautifully human. And that is a
Yeah, I fuck up a
gift.
lot.
I'm telling you, because we all do. Because we
Yeah,
all
yeah.
do, right? And
Right.
so that's what I love, because the next time I fuck up, I can feel okay
Yeah.
about that, right? I don't have to get all it, because I've been reminded again and again, and it is part of the magic of working with you. And I'm and how can I even say this in a better way? I feel like I'm stumbling over my words, right? But
No, you're
there is
beautifully
this there
eloquent.
is this exquisite permission of being real that
I
is so
think
necessary.
it's that anti-shame, and that does
Yeah.
come from like my therapy experience, because that's how I helped so many people heal trauma.
Mhm,
Was that like when you have trauma, there's so much, you feel shame about everything.
mhm,
I mean, so many people who are struggling for their lives, it's because they feel deeply alone, not belonging. I mean, they're probably maybe a star seed as well, like that. Or at least the
mhm,
people I'm working with tend to be, but they're just so cut off from the beauty that they are,
mhm,
and it's because we have these impossible standards. And I even see this like in the school systems, I'm sure, with college and your
mhm,
your older kids. It's like we have to the standards are so high, like nobody
mhm.
feels like they're doing a good job, and there's no permission to fuck up, and we all need
Right.
that to be able to explore
Yes.
what's good for us. And so I see that with parents where they
Yes.
become like helicopter parents, and they're like doing the homework for their kids and whatever,
Mhm.
like guilty here, but
I
like
was
I
just
gotta
the
get this done
opposite.
by tomorrow.
They got more homework support from each other than me, I swear. Um, but
We need
again,
to take that
yeah,
role a little
I
more, but
I knew I had to raise my
I
kids
tend
to be
towards the
self-sufficient. Yeah, I had too many of them. If I was a helicopter mom for all six,
right.
I'd be hella exhausted right now.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I need to take some lessons from you on that one. But yeah, when you have an only, it's a little bit, different vibe there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see these parents where they're like, oh my God, my kid has to get into college, so this have to be perfect. And I'm like, no, like your teenager's job is to make mistakes, like a lot. I
That's
was
the
just talking
time
about
to
this.
do it.
Yes, when it's age
Yes.
appropriate. It's
Yes.
like the people that maybe got married early and get divorced in their 40s, and then they have this big, like, sort of adolescent moment. And I totally get that.
Mhm.
And like I've also seen people wreck their lives because it's like a little less age appropriate to do that in your 40s and
Mhm.
50s than to do it
Mhm.
in your teens and 20s. And so I think we put so much pressure on kids to expect them to go to college and expect them to know what they want to do. And I'm all about human design, and
Mhm.
work with people who have that open G center. I have a defined
Mhm.
one, so that's like your identity and your vision of the future. So I have a pretty
Mhm.
clear one, I always have. But for people who have that open, like my daughter does,
Mhm.
like a lot of people I work with do, they have the hard time like envisioning their place in the future. And I think that's really hard in the sense of like life purpose, because
Mhm.
they may not know, and then they feel like a
Right.
failure, and then it's back to this whole like hopeless thing. And so just to say that I think, gosh, if I could, like wave a magic wand and change some society, and even for
Mhm.
myself, even though I've learned to embrace the fuck ups, like it still is a little agonizing, but I love I think when you do shame reduction, it's about like coming up with the stuff that we feel like it's not okay to say. And that's kind of what I wanted for the podcast too, is to talk about the more
Yes.
taboo, the things
Mhm.
that we don't say and then fully embody and own it.
Right. I would have been just so mortified a couple of years ago thinking about breaking down on a podcast, because I had this belief of in the essence of who I am as a business owner and da 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 da. And look at us today, right?
I know.
Look at
I
us
always say
today.
bonus points for crying. So
Right.
you almost had me there when you were talking about it. And I think that that's coming through more for me. And I had the same thing in my early therapist days. I would never cry. And
Mm,
then sometimes people just like touch your heart,
yeah.
and the pain of what they're telling you is so deep that it's like inauthentic
Mhm.
not to. And so that was definitely an edge for me. And I've
Mm,
cried a couple times on this podcast as well. And it's like, to me, that's like the highest you can get, because
yeah.
like you are so in your body and in your feelings and in your
Mhm.
soul when those tears fall,
Absolutely.
especially to
And
honor your mama that
yeah.
way.
Yes. Yes. And her name is Joy. So even her,
Joy.
right? Exactly. So in the essence of who she is, it also becomes something that I
Mm,
can choose for myself. And I
mhm,
love, 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 love that connection for me. And gosh, gosh, right? I'm feeling gratitude right now. Just gratitude. Like
mhm,
thank you, mom, for all of it.
mm,
And and how I know I can still be everything that I want to be. And by
mhm,
doing that, it will honor her even more. And that just
mhm.
feels so good.
Well, now that I know that connection more deeply, because I've heard the backstory and
Mhm.
how much she means to you and her name, it totally makes sense about your sort of mission to bring bliss to the people and the blistivals and all of that sort of thing. So, do you want to brag a little bit on like what you got cooking there? And I know when something
I
like
would
this
love to.
happens, sometimes you have to push the pause button. I totally get that, but like I know you have this mission to really like bring that joy and bliss to people. So just whatever you want to share about that.
Well, thank you. And yes, my word for it is bliss.
Mhm.
And there for me that embodies the joy, but also the delight and the magic. So that's what I feel is
Mm.
coming together in the
Mhm.
word bliss. So number one, that is why it really resonates. The goddess whispered to me um, before I ever fell out of love with my brand, Retreat Goddess. There's something bigger, and she said, "You're the mistress of bliss," and that felt
Now that's a job
really
title.
good, right? Right. So
Yes,
what does that
please.
mean, right?
I
And
want to be
I
the mistress of bliss when I grow up. We want our daughters saying this, right?
yes. And so the gift that came with understanding why the goddess told me that it really has, because I spent some time wondering, like, wait a second, I almost felt like this identity crisis
Mhm.
because believe me, I loved when during the pandemic when my events business was crumbling, this whole concept of the retreat goddess just showed up, and designing retreats and helping others with their retreats. That has been wonderful. And
Mhm.
I still get to do that, right?
Mhm.
Because the mistress of bliss at the core of who I am, it is to connect people with blissful experiences.
Mhm.
And I can do that in so many ways. Yes, intimate
Mhm.
retreats are still part of it. As a certain
Mhm.
travel agent, booking a cruise for my friend later this afternoon is going to be blissful. Absolutely, right? The festivals that, yes, I've named blisstivals because there's this added element of bringing delight, joy, pleasure, and all the rest into it. And there is no better overarching word or phrase for it, you know? And
Mhm.
so as I experience the grief and have given myself permission to press the pause button, and as
Mhm.
I look forward to all of that which is to come, I am confident in the alignment of all of it. And
Mhm.
why? Yes, I'm a manifesting generator. So, of course, that explains a lot of several things that light me up.
Right.
And and it all fits, and all fits. And what I've been thinking about even more than ever before is how non-negotiable it has become for me to only serve in ways that completely align with who I am and my
Mm.
values and my beliefs.
Mhm.
and I'm not willing to be out of integrity with myself.
Mhm.
And that has helped so much because it will show up even more powerful in my business. And because the goddess needs to make some more money, that the very, roller coaster type
Mhm.
revenue that shows up in my business, I get to also find work elsewhere
Mhm.
that is
Mhm.
completely and fully aligned. And as
Mhm.
long as the alignment is there, I'm not going to turn down the gift of abundance that is being sent
Mhm.
my way. And so that's what I'm looking at right now, and that's what it feels good. It doesn't feel like I'm selling out. I think that's the important thing I had to do for myself.
Mhm. Mhm. I totally get that. And like I took about a year break on this podcast, but then I got the
Mhm.
call and when I had the capacity to like reactivated it. And I think that that's really beautiful that it changes right now. I'm focused a little bit on the book because
Mhm.
Goddess has been like I know that that's actually the number one thing and I've been putting things like above that. And so I had plans to launch a million things, but I was like, oh, this book thing actually, like, that's where the energy is and it's coming through and I'm getting the green
Mhm.
light. So I'm gonna do that. But Fearless Feminine is happening for the summer, but that's probably going to be the main thing that I'm launching. And that'll be easy because we've done it so many times. And I think
Mhm.
it's been about every 6 months is about the average. I'd like to get to the point of doing it
Nice.
every 3 months, but 6 months is nice because it does give you time to like lean into the business, to life, to the changes. And then it is amazing at how much people have changed over the
Yeah.
rounds and not only like in their business viability and money and clients and impact and all those great things but also just like as a person.
Mhm.
So it's just so validating to change. And, when like it's just so permission giving when you see other people changing and to acknowledge your own changes and to show up even more, so I love that idea of not selling out. And
Yeah.
I think so many people are bound to that, corporate, like, gotta work, just waiting for my day off. And
Mhm.
I totally get that, is a have to for a lot of people. And also I think there's something empty about that. And that's a really
Mhm.
tough moment to have to feel like you have to sell out just to survive.
Mhm.
And so I think that's part of the new paradigm is like I think the millennials and younger are really great at this, even though they're just kind of hitting the workforce, is
Yep.
like they won't do what they don't want to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's
Yeah.
a lot to learn
Yeah.
from that.
Yes. We've had to deconstruct these societal rules, right?
The
And
programming.
break through all of that. And we're all doing amazing at it. I absolutely
Mhm.
know that because I've witnessed it again and again. And it is I just I as like you've said before, how chaotic and things are right now, I still have such hope and a
Yeah.
belief in generations to come and who
Yeah.
we're already
Me too.
seeing show up. That feels so good. And like, oh, how do we just pass the baton? Let them lead. Let the younger ones lead now. I can sit in the back and just work.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know, and it's like I think we all are in need of that hope. And like you were saying about your mom, Joy, when I was working at the
Yeah.
treatment center, the owner, Hope, who I need to have on the podcast. We've talked about it. I gotta get her scheduled. So she's has this, 7-figure business in mental health outpatient doing DBT, which is huge and has helped so
Mhm.
many people. And her name is Hope, right? And so in treatment, we would say, hold on, pain ends.
I
And
love
so I
that.
do think your name, I've got, Megan
Mm.
Monday here. I know,
Mhm.
like the moon day, like part of my mission is, you know, goddessy, magicy things and helping the world. So I think it's just really beautiful to see those options open up
Yeah.
and that people don't necessarily have to do something traditional just to make
Mhm.
a decent life for themselves. They can, even maybe make more or have a better lifestyle doing something that's like authentic and beautiful and
Mhm.
artistic and creative. So, yeah, I'm
Absolutely,
excited
'cause
for this world
me
that's coming.
too, me too.
And you're such a good reminder because it's so easy. We don't hear these stories of hope, and it's
Yeah.
easy to get caught in all the things that are not working. And, like that 2020 lens, like it's like been in
Mhm.
our face so that we can see what's not working. But it's also easy to get lost in that and just to
Yep.
realize that, it actually is. like for the good, and good
Hmm.
things are happening, and like the revolution is not being televised. It's
Right.
maybe being podcasted, but
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
so, Julie, I am just so thankful that
Mm.
you're in my life. And I remember you when on the first podcast, you were like, I just have so much fun playing with you. And I just want to thank you so much for being a
Still
goddess
true.
in my life. And you're just have like a such a beautiful, affirming, um, playful energy. And I just love that. So if people want to find you, where do they go? Tell us the things.
Well, you can find me on Instagram, The Retreat
Mhm.
Goddess. I am there.
Perfect.
I still haven't figured out how to show up more than I'm there. So I'm there. Let me just say
Mhm. Yeah.
that. And I always share my email address because honestly, that's the
Mhm.
best way to get in touch with me. Julie
Sure.
at retreatgoddess.com. Julie at
Mhm.
retreatgoddess.com. It's that easy. And of course, through you, if they follow you, they can find me.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm excited. Any
And we'll put
conversation
it
I
in the show
have
notes and everything.
is perfect. Yes. Oh, thank you, my darling playful goddess sister.
Well, and thank you, and I wanna honor Joy, your mother.
Mm,
I felt her spirit through this, conversation, and just what a great I'm all about the matriarchy, so, like, what a
yeah.
beautiful conversation to have about the matriarchy,
Mm,
through this really beautiful, vulnerable share about, what it's been like,
thank you.
for you to grieve her and become the matriarch yourself. So, thank you so
Indeed,
much for your
indeed.
willingness, and you're such a beautiful soul. I'm so glad you're in my life.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way. And
Yeah.
any way I can help shine the light on you and celebrate you and everything that you
Mm.
do, the world is better for it. So thank you for
Mm.
everything, my dearest Dr. Megan Monday. Mm.
Aw, thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you, the viewers, for watching. I so appreciate it. Like and subscribe, do those things. Look out for Fearless Feminine and go check out Julie Palmer. She's amazing. So, bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.